Boop! Happy Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, May the 3rd, 2022, and today's daily Bible readings come to us from Psalm 121, Ezekiel 1:26 through 2:1, and then Acts 26, 1 through 18. I'm going to take a look at Acts today and talk about what Paul said to King Agrippa. Basically, he's saying, so this is how I got here. He's on trial, really, because he made people mad, because he was preaching the gospel. So Paul now gets to make his case before King Agrippa and Festus, who was the governor at the time, which, don't call it, it's an odd name to give your child, Festus. But anyway, so Paul gets to make his case about, what he's doing, what he's up to, and why he's there. But here's the interesting thing. He doesn't spend the time trying to get himself out of jail or out of trouble as much as he is using his trial as a venue to proclaim the gospel and talk about how Christ had redeemed him and everything that Christ had done for him and everything that Christ wants to do for the world and for his audience. And so he's using it as a soapbox, basically. Whereas you might think, where he's on trial, that he might be, trying to get himself out of trouble, but he's not. The interesting thing to me is that he takes persecution and turns it into proclamation. He takes what everybody else who got him there in that first place that thought was, like, oh great, we've really got him up against the ropes. He takes their persecution and turns it into an opportunity to proclaim the gospel. The interesting thing also is how this text, specifically 26:18, how often it turns up in Charles Wesley's journals, and Charles Wesley's ministry, especially when his presence and his preaching were met with the 18th century English equivalent of persecution. And sometimes that persecution came from people who were completely outside of the faith or nominally a part of the faith. People you would pretty much, solidly outside the faith, and you would expect them to kind of have no clue about what Charles Wesley is talking about. Not really be very keen on not necessarily that they really hate Christ, but they're just not really keen on the whole religion idea in general, and the whole idea that they, should maybe live certain lives. You kind of expected it for some of them. But the problem was, more often it seems to have come from people of the faith, especially his fellow clergy, who were aghast at the message of grace, redemption, and sanctification that Charles Wesley and John Wesley and the other people called Methodists were proclaiming. It was very much like what Paul was experiencing, where a huge number of the people that were really persecuting him, it wasn't so much the pagans, it wasn't so much the people who were worshiping, that you knew they were just, they worshiping the Roman gods and the Greek gods and the Persian gods. It wasn't necessarily them as much as it was the people who were supposed to be worshiping the God. And so they did not like this message of redemption that Paul was preaching. Charles Wesley's own colleagues did not like the message of redemption and grace and sanctification that, call to a holy life, holy living, that Charles and the people called Methodists were preaching. So it was these times, though, interestingly enough, that Charles would take Paul's words, Christ's words, Christ's commission for Paul as his own. And you see over and over again in his journals, when he's up against this kind of challenge, him saying, he's saying, and he would even preach on this. He'd say things like, they came and they railed against me, they did this, that, the other thing. And he said, I shared with them my commission. And he quotes directly, he says, to open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, so that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me. Not me as in Charles Wesley, me as in Christ. Those were Christ's words to Paul on the Damascus road as Paul was on his way to persecute the Christians. Anyway, just an interesting thing about how we're commissioned. Anyway, that's the DBR for today. Get out, enjoy the day, and we'll be back tomorrow. Boop.